He is a cold-blooded and ruthless killer, a man who acted with premeditated savagery when he killed 2 unarmed policewomen. Today, the families of PC's Fiona Bone and Nicola Hughes wept in court as Dale Cregan was told that he will spend the rest of his life in prison.
Cregan initially denied what he had done, but as the 4-month trial progressed, he began to change his story. First, he admitted he had killed PC's Nicola Hughes and Fiona Bone. Then, weeks later, he confessed to the murders of father and son David and Mark Short. Today, others who helped him with the Short murders were convicted by the jury.
This evening, in this special edition of North West Tonight, we can tell you the full story for the first time. Let's begin by joining our chief reporter, Dave Guest, who is outside Preston Crown Court. Dave.
Well, yes, Roger, this has been a long and harrowing trial for many of those involved, but it has to be said Dale Cregan had the air of a man without a care in the world this afternoon. He sauntered back into the dock of courtroom number 1 at 4 o'clock to hear his sentence, and as he waited for the judge to come, he was laughing and joking with others in the dock. Well, when Mr Justice Holroyd began to give his sentences out, he said he'd observed that Cregan and many in the dock had shown little sign of remorse during the weeks of this trial. He said there were people driven by self-interest. He said a conviction for murder inevitably attracted a life sentence, but life meant life only in exceptional circumstances. Now, others in the dock today who were convicted of the murders of David and Mark Short were given life sentences and told they'd serve minimum terms of between 33 and 35 years. But the judge said Cregan was one of those exceptional circumstances. He received a whole life tariff, which means he will never be released from prison. Dale Cregan has just turned 30. He has a long history of violence and offences going back into his teens. He lost his eye during a barroom brawl in Thailand. This time last year, few outside his circle heard the name of Dale Cregan, but it was a name that was to become infamous across the land.
Hyde Police Station, September 18th, 2012. Britain's most wanted fugitive is handing himself in. Dale Cregan tells a stunned officer, "I'm wanted by the police and I've just done 2 coppers." The 2 coppers were police constables Fiona Bone and Nicola Hughes. They were lying dead in the garden of this house just a few miles away in Mottram. Cregan had lured them here by dialling 999.
Police emergency.
Someone just threw a big concrete slab through my back window and ran off.
Cregan called himself Adam and even referred to the police operator as mate.
Right, I'll get an officer up there, have a look round and see if they can see anybody similar, and then they'll come and see you. All right, Adam?
How long would it take, do you know, roughly?
Because it's just happened, it's gone in on the priority, so that's within the hour, certainly.
All right then, thanks very much.
Okay.
I'll be waiting.
Cregan ended that phone conversation with the words, "I'll be waiting." And he was, with a fully loaded Glock pistol and a hand grenade. He'd chosen this house specifically because it offers such a clear view of the road. He could see anyone as they were approaching. So, as the 2 officers walked towards the front door, he opened fire. They didn't stand a chance. Fiona attempted to deploy her taser, but it was no use. Nicola was shot repeatedly as she lay on the ground. Dale Cregan fired 30 shots in as many seconds. Then, as a parting gesture, he lobbed the hand grenade at the fallen officers.
Fiona and Nicola were beat bobbies answering a routine call. They were not armed.
And I just heard bang, 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 like, you know, shots, and then a massive bang at the end. And I heard a woman crying out in pain. It was scary.
So scary, in fact, that this woman asked us not to reveal her identity. Others who witnessed what happened here that day still can't believe what they saw.
I think that I was next door cleaning the windows and the guy was still inside. You know, Britain's most wanted. You just don't expect it. It was like some of a Hollywood scene. People running around, panicking, you know, in shock. And the one lady that said to me, he said, "I think it's him. I think he's done it, him with the grenade."
Cregan dropped the empty pistol, then took a car and headed straight to Hyde Police Station, just a few minutes' drive away. He was to tell police they'd been hassling his family, so he'd done the same to theirs. The police knew they had the culprit. At a news conference, the Chief Constable made it plain he believed Cregan was the killer.
He has deliberately done this in an act of absolutely cold-blooded murder.
But those comments and the resulting headlines drew criticism from those who said he'd appeared to prejudge any trial. Indeed, having told the police he'd killed their colleagues, Cregan then told the jury he hadn't. So the case was underway. Cregan's daily trip to Preston Crown Court was enveloped in the tightest of security. The convoy became a routine sight for commuters on the M61. The court itself a fortress with armed police on duty inside and out. For the families of the fallen officers, there was the trauma of listening to the harrowing details of their final moments. Then, on day 4 of his trial, Cregan surprised everyone. He admitted killing the 2 police officers. But although he'd admitted to the atrocity in Abbey Gardens, the story was far from over. Nicola Hughes and Fiona Bone were not his first victims. Cregan had killed before.
Because, of course, he had already murdered father and son David and Mark Short. Well, Mr. Justice Holroyd said this afternoon that the crime of murder ends one life but ruins many more. And some of those whose lives have been ruined by Cregan's crimes gave their reaction outside court.
Our lives have been shattered and will never be the same again. To have a child taken away from you in such a cruel and meaningless way is without doubt the worst thing any parent could imagine.
No sentence served by the people who murdered my Dave and Mark will ever be long enough to reflect the pain and suffering caused by their loss. I miss Dave and Mark so much, my heart aches for them every waking hour.
The murders of all 4 victims, Mark Short, David Short, Police Constables Fiona Bone and Nicola Hughes, were nothing short of executions, planned, premeditated and cold-blooded.
And of course that trail of executions eventually led to the court here in Preston. But the trail of death actually began in the Greater Manchester town of Droylsden just over a year ago.
Okay, Dave, thanks very much. Yes, Dale Cregan's first victim was Mark Short, killed here at the Cotton Tree pub in Droylsden last May. CCTV captured the gunman running into the pub. 7 shots were fired. Mark Short, an amateur boxer with a history of criminal violence, died. 3 other people were hurt. Dale Cregan, of course, the man with the gun, but Luke Livesey and Damien Gorman also played a part in the murder. Cregan and some of his co-accused then lay low in Thailand, flying business class and living in 5-star luxury. On their return to Manchester in June, they were arrested by the police, but released on bail pending further inquiries. By early August, Cregan had disappeared again, this time to Bowness in the Lake District with his family. Then on August the 10th, Cregan resurfaced to kill again. His next victim was David Short, Mark Short's father. Cregan, Anthony Wilkinson and Jermaine Ward murdered him in his own home in Clayton. He was chased through the house and shot many times. Cregan then threw a grenade onto him. A short while later, Cregan launched a grenade at another house before going on the run. Mohammed Imran Ali organised a hideout in Yorkshire. And despite a £50,000 reward offered for his capture, Cregan wasn't found for more than a month, until the day he made a 999 call and lured police officers Fiona Bone and Nicola Hughes to their deaths.
Well, one man who comforted PC Nicola Hughes as she lay dying has told North West Tonight that what he saw will live with him forever. Still traumatised by what happened, he asked us to conceal his identity, but he agreed to speak exclusively to the BBC and describe to us the events, those terrible events of that awful September morning.
All of a sudden, heard some bangs. Thought it was fireworks. Went out the front door, saw my neighbour jumping over the fence, so I jumped over the fence, and then we saw somebody running up the road shouting that they'd been shot. My neighbour, he started phoning the police. I saw Nicola and Fiona. I saw Fiona under the window. She wasn't moving or anything, she was just lay under the window, but I could see that Nicola was near the gate and she was breathing. So I just went and sat with her while, don't really know what else was going on. I just stayed with her and told her everything was going to be all right. You don't know what to do, there's nothing you can do. But I just She's not much older than my daughter. What gets me the most is I was with Nicola. Fiona was under the window and there was nobody there for her. I didn't know whether she was dead, but I know now that she was, but I didn't at the time, but I couldn't go to her because I didn't want to leave Nicola. It's still in your head that you did nothing, but you do get told you did what you could. There was nothing you could have done. It doesn't really matter, does it? They're still gone.
32-year-old PC Fiona Bone had been a police officer for 5 years. She grew up in Port St Mary on the Isle of Man. Before work, on the morning of her death, she'd been sorting out invitations for her civil partnership.
Nicola Hughes was 23. Growing up in the village of Diggle in Saddleworth, she had dreamed of joining the police. She'd served with them for 3 years when she was killed on duty.
More than 50,000 people, most of whom who'd never met the two police officers, signed books of condolence, both online and in police stations and churches. And many were alongside hundreds of police officers paying their respects at the women's funerals, when Manchester stood still to remember its loss.
Clearly this is one of the darkest days in the history of Greater Manchester Police.
A week ago today, the world was deprived of two wonderful human beings. The police service lost two of its rising stars, and the community lost two of its dedicated servants.
Regardless of whether they knew her, I think everyone's feeling the same and everyone wants to do her proud today, really.
A life cut short by the forces of evil at such a young age.
Well, Nicola and Fiona were police officers, but they were also daughters. Tonight, their families remember the day they died and the loved ones that they lost.
Nicola had a really wicked sense of humour. She always saw the fun side of life. She was determined to join the police, and that's what she went out and obviously did.
Do you want to make a difference?
Make a difference. Yeah, she did want to make a difference. Yeah. And ultimately I think she has.
She was a lovely, bubbly person, and we'll always have that in our hearts. And it's hard to imagine she's gone. We first saw it on the 1 o'clock news that two people had been injured, I think it was in Mottram. And just about thinking, you know, we'll give Fiona a quick ring and see what's happening, when there was a knock on the door and there's two policemen there.
I was driving home from work and I had a call from a DCI who wanted to speak to me. He was waiting at my home, so I think the minute he says, I'm from the police and I need to speak to you, I'm outside your house, that's when you start to realise there's something seriously wrong.
We're getting used to it because of the nature of the death and the trial and the prolonged, drawn-out agony of it all. We're hoping now it's finished, we'll sort of begin to recover.
The outpouring of sort of public grief that's helped us to know that kind of we're not on our own. But in terms of kind of dealing with it in private, like you say, and having that kind of private time, I still think that's yet to come.
I think as a parent, you're in that expectation that your children will be there for when you die.
To deliberately go, oh, I'm just going to kill a policeman today because I don't like them, it seems unreal. And it's a level of callousness and no empathy with anybody is beyond really my comprehension. He's taken my daughter from me. I can't forgive him for that, and there's nothing I can do about it either.
I don't think you could even give it justice or of how proud you are of Nicola for whatever she did, even now, for whatever she's still doing now.
All the things she did, she made me proud, and I really miss her every day.
The reflections of the families of Fiona Bone and Nicola Hughes. We'll have more on the conclusion of the Dale Cregan murder trial in just a moment.
Yes, but let's get some other news from around the northwest now. And the government has said that the widow and son of Middleton soldier Lee Rigby, murdered in Woolwich last month, will receive money from the state. There had been concerns his family would not receive their full allowance as he wasn't killed on active duty. But the Leader of the Commons told MPs that they would be provided for.
Drugs worth more than £2 million have been seized at Manchester Airport. 35 kilograms of heroin was found in luggage arriving from Pakistan on Friday. It's believed to be the single biggest discovery of its kind at the airport. The day before, more cocaine was discovered on a flight from the Dominican Republic. 2 men have been charged.
The trust that runs Manchester's Wythenshawe Hospitals says publishing performance tables for its consultants will improve patient choice. Critics say it's impossible to devise a rating systems for such a complex job, but the hospital says it'll drive up standards.
Centrica, the owner of British Gas, has taken a 25% stake in Quadrilla's shale gas exploration in Lancashire. It says it's important to develop affordable domestic gas resources. Quadrilla say it's a major boost to their plans to resume fracking in the county.
And 4 new buildings in the northwest are being given national awards by the Royal Institute of British Architects. Cheetham School of Music in Manchester, St Silas Primary School in Blackburn, Manchester Metropolitan Business School and Marks & Spencer at Cheshire Oaks and Ellesmere Port have all been recognised for their modern design.
Back now to our main story this evening, the conclusion of the Dale Cregan murder trial in Preston today. And Cregan had been on the run for 5 weeks when he killed police constables Fiona Bone and Nicola Hughes. By then, he was the British Police's #1 target. Forces all across the UK were looking for him.
But was enough done to find him? Were the police tactics right? And should more have been done to protect officers on the street? Questions our Chief Reporter Dave Guest put to the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police.
Obviously, we've agonised about this and really, you know, the impact of the case and the impact of the deaths of Fiona and Nicola in some ways have been greater because of the fact we were being so desperately searching for Cregan and for other people in the weeks leading up to that. And, you know, that had been consuming us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This was the #1 priority for British policing. And we used every possible tactic and technique that we lawfully could. So obviously it's a source of huge frustration. But certainly having gone way back into that, we don't think there was anything more that we could have done. There was certainly, you know, a group of people protecting him. There were certain techniques that he used, and clearly, you know, particularly he went to an address that he knew was not on our system, that we would not have known about, from where he then lured Fiona and Nicola to their deaths.
When he was arrested, he used that famous phrase saying, "You were hounding my family." So I've taken it out on yous. We're hounding his family.
Well, I think it's just his perverted sense of logic, and you know, obviously we were carrying out a huge number of inquiries into people that Cregan knew, his associates, absolutely, to try and find out where he was, and obviously that included visiting his family. We were very, very concerned about the risk he posed. Sadly, as he showed, you know, that was the case. And therefore it was, you know, we were prepared to use every lawful means to try and find him.
There wouldn't be a change of tactics as a result of
No,
this?
absolutely not. And you know, it's just a ridiculous, perverted form of logic to say that, you know, he's killed 2 police officers because we were carrying out lawful inquiries to try and find out somebody who was wanted for 2 murders. It was a concern to us that if he came across police officers, or if a police officer had tried to arrest him, then that he would have absolutely you know, been prepared to shoot. And obviously that was very much part of our planning. That was why we had so many armed officers on patrol in the area and in surrounding areas. But of course we had to continue normal day-to-day policing. We had to continue with our routinely unarmed form of policing. There was no way we could have armed every single police officer in Greater Manchester. And that is what we did. And of course that was what Cregan exploited.
Sir Peter Fahy speaking to our Chief Reporter Dave Guest. Cregan was a man with a reputation in Tameside, a drug dealer who people knew not to cross, but few could imagine he would be capable of murder and 4 murders altogether.
Cregan had a deep-rooted hatred of the Short family. That hatred was to spill over into the community with terrible consequences. Abby Jones has been looking at how Cregan became a killer.
Dale Cregan had hated the Short family since he was a boy. As a child, he fought younger members who came from Clayton to his Droylsden patch. But it was David Short he loathed the most. And when that hatred reached boiling point, ordinary people got caught in the crossfire.
Please visit the gym. Told me they've got to shut the gym down because they've had a bomb threat.
Joe Pennington runs a boxing gym in Clayton where the Shorts used to train. After their murders, with Cregan on the run, he was told it could be a target.
Big shock because, you know, like a bomb threat to a gym, and it did happen around the corner, so we knew it was real. So we straight away just shut the gym down.
Those who knew Cregan or his reputation say he ran things in Tameside and was willing to use violence to get his own way. He was fascinated by knives and boasted of earning up to £20,000 a week dealing drugs. We've spoken to one man too afraid to appear on camera who says people knew not to go to the police.
These people, their reputation always travels before him. He was ruthless and people were scared of him, and that was it.
Ruthless and obsessed with killing David Short. He told a psychiatrist he'd fantasised about killing him for 5 years. But it was his son, Mark, he murdered first at this Droylsden pub. He'd drunk 10 bottles of beer and taken cocaine. Then, fearing retaliation, he killed David Short. He said later he had the best sleep of his life that night. Cregan used military grenades for the first time in a murder on the UK mainland, on a residential road in broad daylight. They were to become his calling card. A stash of the weapons believed to be his were found hidden in an Oldham storm drain during his trial. He was to use them again against PC's Fiona Bone and Nicola Hughes when his anger turned on the police who were hunting him.
So indiscriminate that people get injured, we don't know how many casualties will occur, what damage will cause, what disruption will cause. So it's a really worrying trend if criminals are going to start using grenades.
Police say tensions are still high in this area of Manchester. They say a large number of people are still on their threats to life register, which means they've been given warnings their lives are in danger.
David Short was issued with 3 threats to life warnings before he died. Greater Manchester Police gave out 130 in total last year and 130 in 2011, more than the Metropolitan Police issued in both years.
We got police officers!
Police have been quick to clamp down on criminal behaviour in Tameside since last year's brutal killings. A warning that local rivalries must never again lead to such terrible tragedy.
Yes, it was indeed a terrible tragedy. Let's go live to Abby Jones now, who's in Mottram and joins us where the 2 police officers were murdered. Abby.
Well, Roger, just how that long-running bad blood between criminal figures who live some 10 miles away from here could result in the deaths of 2 police officers is something this community is still struggling to come to terms with and to understand. We still don't fully know why Dale Cregan set his deadly trap here, and we probably never will. The police believe he was trying to ensure he'd become some kind of folk hero, but the people living here, the officers' families and their colleagues are determined to ensure that he is not the one remembered, but that we remember 2 brave, dedicated, talented police officers who gave their lives for their community.
Abby, thank you very much indeed.
BBC Radio Manchester will have a special documentary on this subject called In the Line of Duty. That's at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Right, let's get a look at the weather now with Diane.
Thanks, Annabelle. Good evening to you. Well, it's a fairly pessimistic weather forecast as we head through the next 12, 24 and even 36 hours. This is our live shot right now. Still some fairly active looking cloud out there. And tomorrow's forecast is not that dissimilar to today. It looks like you'll see more rain and that wind will continue to be really quite strong. This was the line that the rain took through the day. By the time you got to about 2 or 3 o'clock, most places had seen the back of it. And over the last couple of hours, we saw some sunshine appearing here and there around the region. But you can still see 1 or 2 showers waiting out into the Irish Sea. As they move toward us, some of those will fall apart. So I think 90% of us will be dry from here on, virtually all the way through the night. Many places will become fairly clear for a short while at least, and where you get that clear weather, in theory your temperatures could go as low as 6 or 7 in the countryside, so that's not particularly warm. But as you head toward the early hours of the morning, here you go, the cloud starts to roll back on in again. For many of us though, temperatures 9 to 11 degrees. Now when you get up tomorrow morning, the sun is up very, very early. You won't see it because that line of weather is already starting to push in. 1 or 2 showers on the leading edge, and then it becomes much more organised as the morning goes on, and there'll be some fairly heavy rain for a good portion of the morning, particularly in the more northern parts of the region, but not exclusively so. Many places will see a heavy burst. Once you get past lunchtime, it turns much more showery, and in fact it dries up for many places for a short while at least. Your temperatures, with the wind going back toward the south, could get up to around 18 degrees, but the next line of rain is waiting in the wings, and that comes toward you tomorrow evening. It's never dry for very long at the moment. Back to you.
Diane, thank you. Dale Cregan will die in prison, punished for the murders of 4 people. One family lost a father and son caught up in a long-running feud.
But it is without doubt the killing of 2 policewomen last September which will long resonate. Fiona Bone and Nicola Hughes, 2 young women with so much of their lives left to lead, answering a routine police call, killed in the line of duty. Our thoughts are with their families tonight. From all of us, good night.
Debbie, Harry and Christine from Blondie are guests of the